Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Crop Life Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of Crop Life and Crop Life Iron magazines, here again with Lara Sowinski. Laura, how are you?
A little bit tired. It's been a long week, but I'm great. It's Thursday and we
I
are
was
recording retail week.
I was going to say
Highlight
you
week.
you and you and I were both on the road this week. I know I had a very long drive getting home from where I was at, and through a little inclement weather and big city traffic, which is never fun. And I know you said that you got to spend the night in the Dallas airport. Not quite, but close, right?
But close, yeah. Lots of storms moving across the country, of course, and happened to get stuck in one of them. But for those Texans who may know the local El Paso boy, Beto O'Rourke, he was in the airport, and I said hi to him because I'd actually taken a picture with him one time, but he had his earbuds in and he didn't hear me, but he was on my flight. But yeah, it's always nice to come home from work trips. Not that I don't mind the work trips, or not that I mind the work trips, I should say, but isn't it great come home and
Well,
have a coffee?
and I was just saying, I don't know about you, but I know this year in particular, it's like for whatever reason, I don't know if the airlines are being more cautious or the weather's just been more nasty, or maybe it's a labor issue, but it seems like, I mean, I used to get delayed in the middle of winters, but traveling in the spring and the summer and the fall usually wasn't quite that uncertain. And this year has really
Yeah,
been,
it's true.
I've had at least a dozen flights canceled. I've had like a half a dozen flights delayed more than 3 hours. On occasion, and one instance, I actually had the flight canceled, and I had to rent a car and drive 6.5 hours to get home because the next flight out was like the following afternoon. And I'm like, well, I could sit around for another 24 hours, or I can actually get home in six. So, yeah, I mean, so viewers, for those of you out there who've had bad travel experiences, we feel for you because we're also suffering with this stuff. I think it's
Yep,
everybody. So.
I agree.
Well, speaking of negative news, so I guess we'll have to start out with it. I know what a transition, right? Um, the recent videos past, we've been talking a lot about the issues on the Mississippi River, and I guess we've hit another, I guess you'd call it low point in more ways than one. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, the Mississippi River water levels have now reached a new record low. As of October 11th, the water level was at minus 11.52 feet. And that broke the previous record of minus 10.81 feet, which was set a year ago in October 2022. So, and again, as we said, with the barge traffic not moving, grain's not getting up and down the river, crop nutrients aren't getting up and down the river. And on the grain side, at least, the story I was looking at was talking about the low water levels, said that growers are now like dusting off old grain bins and are just stowing their grain because they're not convinced they're going to be able to get it onto a barge going down the Mississippi River anytime in the near future. So it sounds like grain bin storage capacity is going to increase rapidly over the next month or so. So something we'll have to follow as we go forward.
Right. Yeah, that's yeah, it was last year, I think early last year, and I was talking to a barge operator, and he said, while there is it's not that unusual. I mean, this is kind of a similar pattern that we see year after year, but not to the extreme. So, yeah, a new wrinkle in supply chain management. And while some folks have been able to use road and rail to offset, what's going on with the Mississippi, it's not, you just don't have the capacity there. So that's just a quick fix. How do we get some stuff to move? So yeah, what's the answer to that?
Water.
that's
I mean,
major
we need rain
waterborne
and lots
artery.
of it to get the water levels up. And unfortunately, you know, over almost 12 feet below norms. I mean, that's going to
Yeah.
require some hefty storms and probably and not just one big thunder burst, that dumps a couple of inches and then goes away. We're talking, we need like a couple of sustained rain events that are
Mhm,
dropping an inch or two at a
mhm.
time over the course of, I'd say, 7 to 10 days, and then maybe the situation will start to improve. But
Yeah.
we'll just have to watch the weather. And again, not that we're telling growers, retailers, or our viewers in general. I mean, they all pay attention to the weather.
Sure.
But for those folks that live in areas that have the waterways that feed the Mississippi River, uh,
Mhm.
they're going to be praying for rain, I suspect, for that
Yeah.
reason. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Well,
right.
I'm glad you were the bearer of the bad news this time because usually it's me.
Well, and I think you have some good news to share. So
I,
please
I
enlighten
did.
our viewers.
I pounced on it, especially because this is taking place in Ohio. So Reuters is reporting on October 20. The news item is Louis Dreyfus Company is going to build an Ohio soy crush plant. So Louis Dreyfus Company will build a soybean processing plant in Ohio, um, adding to a booming expansion of oilseed crushing in North America, encouraged by biofuel use. So construction on this plant is going to start early 2024 in the Upper Sandusky area. It will have a annual soy crushing capacity of 1.5 million metric tons. The plant will have a capacity to produce 320,000 metric tons per year of edible soybean oil and 7,500 metric tons of lecithin. Construction is expected to finish by 2026. Dreyfus said the site will serve food, livestock feed, and biofuel markets. Soybean crush capacity may swell by as much as 30% over the next 3 years, according to Reuters, largely to supply vegetable oil to new renewable diesel production facilities. Our friends over at Agriculture Dive are reporting that renewable diesel demand is, as we said, underpinning strong demand for soybean oil. Processors are rushing to increase production to keep up. The American Soybean Association is reporting that at least 23 new facilities or plant expansions were announced as of the end of 2022, increasing crush capacity by 34%. So that's big news. How far are you, and how far is our home office from the Upper Sandusky region?
Yeah, not too far. Probably about a 90-minute, maybe 100-minute
Oh,
drive. I mean, that's in around the Toledo range, so not too far away from where we're at.
okay. So I thought that was an interesting news item.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. So, and not just to prove that now that you brought us back up, I can bring us back down. The last news item I have to talk about is something that made the rounds. I'm sure maybe some of our viewers saw this, but there was a company in the biological space called AgBiome,
Mhm,
um, AgBiome, based out of Research Triangle Park in North Carolina.
mhm.
And they've employed about 100 employees. They have a couple of products in the marketplace that are alternatives to synthetic products. And unfortunately, they announced on October 16th that they're planning to lay off all their employees by December 15th. So, um,
Oh,
reading through that announcement, it certainly sounds like they, as a company, are not going to be around past the middle of December. So that is not good news, obviously. But
oh,
biologicals is one of those spaces. I mean, it kind of reminds me of back in the early 2000s when there were a lot of startup companies getting involved in internet and trying to sell products online. And again, that was back in the early days of online commerce. And there were like 50 companies at one point, and a year later there was maybe a dozen left. So unfortunately, biologicals is sort of an up and coming segment. These kind of things apparently are going to happen. So this is a segment we'll have to keep an eye on over the next year or so to see if there are other companies that were startups that got a lot of financing initially that have now had seen that run its course and will not be around or will be acquired or merged with somebody else in the marketplace that's a little larger. So.
I saw that news item as well, but I don't recall. I maybe just glanced at the headlines. Were there more details as to why such a drastic, just
No.
closing the doors kind of thing?
No, I mean, I think if I remember reading the story correctly, in the state of North Carolina, there has to be like a 60-day notice to the employees if there's going to be like a quote unquote mass layoff event. And I think that I think all the company did was send out the notice, and whoever the author was of the story I read online, they were going by someone in the company who had passed along that news via their notice.
Okay.
So there wasn't actually a note from the company itself. So
Yeah, I would like to dig further into that. The reason being, I mean, obviously we've been covering stories, companies are launching bioscience divisions and so on and so forth. So for such a drastic turnaround for this company, just curious, but yeah, that's a again, I'm glad you're
yes,
you're
I
the
get to be the Debbie Downer today. I'm sorry. So sorry. Well, hopefully we can
for
pick
once.
people back up with our end segment. So that this is
Oh.
all on you, Laura. So it is time, everyone, for Laura's favorite segment of the show. Time for Fun with Numbers.
Yay. All righty. I'm going
right.
with pen and scratch paper.
All right. So get ready. This week, your number is 12%.
Okay.
All right. So, Miss Laura, is 12%, is that A, the decline in Mississippi water levels over the past 12 months? Is it B, the decline in rail car grain shipments since 2022? Is it C, the increase in the number of CropLife 100 ag retailers concerned about rising interest rates going into 2024? Or is it D, the percentage of time Laura spent at our recent CropLife Advisory Council meeting sitting down versus standing?
Just because I wanted to get comfortable and
And I have one
more
picture of
informed with
you.
it,
I
enhance
think you
conversation.
stood when you got up there and said, "Where's my chair?" And I think you stood when you got ready to get out the chair. And for the other 88% of the time, you were seated, as opposed to me, who was standing 100% of the time. And yes, I have pictures if people want to see them.
I believe I stood to get a second cup of coffee so that I wouldn't have to crawl to the coffee.
And that's why it was
Like
closer
I
to
do every morning.
12%. So.
Oh, brother. Can you reread C again?
See, the increase in the number of CropLife 100 ag retailers concerned about rising interest rates going into 2024. And again, it's 12%. So
I'm gonna say C.
no. Actually, correct answer is B.
Oh, the
12%.
rail?
Yeah,
Rain?
12%,
Oh,
because
wow.
this came from the same story talking about the low Mississippi water levels. And
Yeah.
in that story, the author mentioned the fact that rail is possible alternative, and then pointed out that based on the USDA numbers regarding rail shipments of grain over the past year, that they are down 12% because of uncertainty over rail strikes early on, and also
Right.
just in general uncertainty in rail availability, rail car availability, moving grain over the last year. So yeah, I was a little surprised by that. And the water levels are down 7%. Interest rates was 10%. That was the
Oh, okay.
percentage you were going through.
Okay.
So, and yes, the number and the amount of time you were seated versus standing, yeah, 12% to 88%. Easy.
All right, all right.
All right. Well,
Yes.
Miss Laura, thank you for joining us. I'm glad to see you're still seated. And for our viewers out there, thank you for joining us this week for Crop Life Retail Week. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again real soon. If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comments section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.